Hello, hello. This is Michelle Perda, Life and Marriage Coach for Moms. In this video, I'm going to talk to you all about how to break patterns that might be in your marriage today that could be wreaking havoc on the health of your marriage and, most importantly, your happiness. Here we go. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the 5-step process that you can start to incorporate into your marriage so that you can finally break those pesky patterns that are causing a lot of stress and frustration and resentment in your relationship. So let's talk about what the different patterns are that exist within our relationships. In general, there are 3 different types of patterns that I see a lot within my clients' relationships and even in this community. So it's either your husband or partner doesn't react the way you expect him to, which then causes you to respond a certain way, whether it's with shock, sadness, anger, fury, rage, wanting to shut down, which then kind of sets off a chain reaction, which then defines the pattern. Okay, and I'll get into a more specific example in a bit. Another example of a pattern is he doesn't do what you hoped for or what you wanted him to do. You had this thing in your mind, you had a vision in your mind, and things didn't play out the way you wanted it to. So then that set another chain of events in motion, which then defined your pattern. The third one is maybe he said something that you perceived as offensive, as a criticism, as an insult to who you are. And it hurt. And so then you got set off to do whatever reaction you default to. Shut down, get angry, walk away, or the fawn, like the fear response of fawn, right? Where you're just like doing and saying whatever you need, whether it's true to you or not, just to end the conversation, just to move on, not to resolve it, but just to move on. Okay, so those are the 3 biggest ones that I notice within my clients. And so the example I want to offer to you today comes from a former client who happens also to be my friend. And this happened over the weekend. And so what happened was she had a busy day. She's a stay-at-home mom. She had a really busy day, and her daughter was finally asleep. Her husband's hanging out on the couch, doing his thing on the phone. So she plops down next to him and starts, doing the same thing, going through her phone, watching TikTok videos, laughing. And she's like, "Hey, look at this one. This one's hilarious." And he's like, "See, this is why you don't have time, because you're doing stuff like this," or something to that effect. Okay, so in this moment, he has sent her the message, I'm about to start a pattern that we play all the time, where he criticizes her. And so she has already decided in her mind, this is going to play out exactly how it has in the past. And so instead of being present in the moment, she has decided it's done. We're going there. And so what really happened was he said the first half, but didn't say the second half. He caught himself. He caught himself and zipped it. But because she had already decided that they were going down this path, it didn't matter that he didn't finish the sentence. It didn't matter. In her mind, he said it. And even if he didn't say it, he was thinking it. And so she's going to move forward with full force. And so she lashed out. She lashed out. She started going at him like, don't you dare tell me I don't have, I cannot take this break. This is what I did today. This is what I experienced today. I deserve this. Yeah. And so, of course, he perceived that as an attack. And so he decided to dig his heels in. When if she had noticed that, if she were present and noticed that he didn't actually proceed with what he normally would have done, they could have cut it off right there. And so that's what it takes, right? In the simplest form, it takes a disruption. And that requires presence. It requires you to be fully present to what is actually happening right now. What am I assuming versus what is fact? What do I have control over? And what can I release? Okay, and so the first step is to focus on what you're working towards. This came up really big in a client call this morning. We discovered that instead of working towards something, in her case, connection, she was running away from something, which was feeling disconnected. And on the surface, it can seem like, isn't that the same thing? Obviously, if you're running away from disconnect, you're running towards connection. Yes and no. In our minds, if we are focused on preventing the feeling of being disconnected, this is holding you susceptible to fall back into the pattern of being disconnected again. Why? Because as soon as you experience that you're okay, that you two are okay, you're no longer disconnected, you let up. You let up, and then what happens? Time goes on, life gets busy, then you disconnect, and then you find yourself in the same position months later, looking back, how did we get here again? How come we can't stay good for longer than 5 seconds? What is going on? There's something wrong with us. And then you spiral. Okay? And so instead of focusing on what you're trying to avoid happening or what you're running away from, I want you to think about what you're running towards. Okay? Same example for health. Imagine your goal is, I don't want to be fat, versus I want to feel strong. If you're saying I don't want to feel fat, the second that you don't feel fat anymore, you stop thinking I'm good, I know what I'm doing. Your intention starts to lower. You start giving yourself more grace. You think, I've done it. I can keep doing this because I'm no longer fat. I no longer feel fat. I'm good. Versus, I want to feel strong. Okay, there's always a stronger. And so you're going to focus on doing things, doing activities to help you feel stronger. I'm going to do more repetitions. I'm going to do more sets. I'm going to increase the weight. I'm going to exercise for longer. I'm going to try running a half marathon now. I'm going to try a full marathon. Let me know in the comments if this is resonating with you and what you are taking away from this subtle but powerful shift. So focus on what you're working towards rather than what you're running away from. Way more effective. So taking it back to this morning's client, focusing on connecting and feeling connected and maintaining the connecting and nurturing the connection. That's an ongoing thing. You never fully arrive because you want to, it's a journey. It's not like, okay, we've met 50 connections, we're good for the rest of our relationship. If only. It's not like that. It's a living, breathing relationship. It needs continuous nurturing and maintenance. Not to say that has to be rigid by any means. It's not like if we don't hang out for at least half an hour a day, we're doomed. Okay, so that's number one. Let me know in the comments if you're having any questions or resistance coming up, and I will help you work through that. Number two is awareness. Now, there's many different things to be aware of when it comes to breaking patterns. And so here are a few for you to consider. When we react, our body knows that there's something to react to before anything actually happens, before anything comes out of us. And I want you to think back about when you were last angry and initiating or perpetuating a pattern that you have in your marriage. I'll give you one example for me. I grew up with the belief that if you're not on time, it said something about you and not something good. And so obviously having kids challenges that, because you're all moms, you all know. Sometimes they feel stubborn and don't feel like doing things. Sometimes they run away from you. But I'm also super different from my husband. He is very thorough, which in a lot of situations I highly admire and appreciate. And in other situations, I'm like, come on, do you have to do every single step? Let's go. Don't you know what time it is? Let's go. And so when I get the sense that we're running behind, I start to feel like anxious. I start to feel adrenaline pumping through my body. My heart is racing. I feel like jittery. I'm like pacing. I'm like, come on, guys, let's go, let's go, let's go. What are you doing? I get stressed out. But my body tells me before anything comes out of my mouth and before I start pacing, my body tells me. And so next time you find yourself in that situation when you're in a pattern or after the fact, think back. What was happening inside of my body? Once you start to get to know yourself on that level, you're going to be able to anticipate that it's happening because you'll recognize the feeling in you. You'll recognize, oh, it's coming, it's coming. I got to do something. I got to decide what I'm going to do right now before it's too late. So for me, it's like, take a deep breath, ask yourself what you can do to help the situation. Is this something that is out of your control? In which case, girlfriend, just accept it. Do what you can and accept it. It's happening, right? So I want you to tap into what's going on in my body whenever I'm in a pattern, whenever I react, whenever I perpetuate this pattern that I so want to stop. Another way to be aware is, what are the behaviors that you tend to turn on, default to, when you are following a pattern, right? A pattern is basically a script that you're running. Like imagine you're a computer. Okay, when this turns on, we're gonna run this program, even though I hate it. It's annoying that way, right? But in this video, I'm teaching you all the different ways that you can end that program. Exit. No longer needed. Gonna create a new one. Goodbye. Thank you. Okay. So what are the behaviors that are popping up? For me, right, I tend to get critical. I get impatient. I get controlling. So what are some of the behaviors that are showing up in you that you're like, God, I hate when I do that, but I can't help myself? Those are your behaviors. So be aware. And then when you start to notice you're doing that, what's going on here? What triggered me? What do I need? What can be done about this? How do I want to choose to be instead of running the same old program day in, day out, or week on, week off, or however often you guys do your pattern? Okay. Another thing to be aware of, triggers. Identify what sets you off and take the time to get really close with it. Why does that bother me? What about that bothers me? What can I do about it? How do I want to respond? Because in the moment, it's hard to catch yourself from reacting. So this is why thinking about this after the fact, up until you work your way into getting closer to proximity of it happening, catching yourself in the process, and then evolving to the point where you can catch it before it starts. That's the goal. That's the money right there. That's how you truly break patterns. You go from retrospective to, it could be like a week later, a day later, an hour later, 15 minutes later, 5 minutes later. You see the progression? As you step into being introspective about what happened and allowing yourself to think about the stuff that's uncomfortable, you can start to make progress. You can lessen the time that it takes to catch yourself. And then you can catch yourself. When you catch yourself and you talk about it with them, that builds intimacy. That builds trust. That builds safety. That builds partnership. Do that enough, you can catch yourself before. Not every time, right? It's not linear. Depends on the intensity of what's going on. It depends on your current state. Are you hungry? Are you sick? Are you tired? Do you have a lot of stress going on? Are the kids especially nuts that day? Right? Your capacity. So get to know your triggers really well. Then, of course, your feelings, which is connected to your triggers and your behaviors. It all starts with a trigger because you think about the trigger some type of way. You're making it mean something. It's bringing up a belief that you have, whether you know it or not, whether you think he doesn't care about me, I'm not important, I'm not lovable, I'm not capable, I'm not worthy, all kinds of garbage. Okay? And then that creates feelings like, oh, that's sad to me. That's painful to me. That's frustrating to me. That makes me feel lonely. And then the behaviors come out. And then there goes that pattern again. Your reaction. So while you cannot stop your husband from doing what he's going to do, you can control how you're going to respond or react so that you can start to take side steps to creating a different pattern. Because if you guys are going to react off of each other, no matter what, good times and bad times. So if you choose to react differently, he's going to respond to that different reaction. And if you continue to, react that same way, you're where you were once going, right? Like towards this way, the old pattern. Take a sidestep, 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 somewhere new. See how that works? Very simple. Challenging to implement, but simple in the process. Simple in process. Third step, assess and test. How are things going? Did the thing that you tried work? Do it again. Did it not work? What needs to be tweaked? Test it out. right? If you go into a pattern of yelling, one thing you might want to try is taking deep breaths. See if that works. Try it on for a little bit. Or you may want to be like, I need to take a timeout. I need to put myself on a timeout until I am collected enough to come back to process this with you. Try that out. Maybe it's, hey, can we rewind? Can we do that all over again? There are so many different ways that you can change how you react. So find a way that works for you, that works for your relationship. And then keep testing. Keep testing. Step 4 is commitment. How committed are you to making sure that this pattern changes? What I often see is, oh, well, I tried that one thing one time and it didn't work. And so, oh, well, we're stuck. But how long did it take that pattern to be created? Probably years. And you're like, I did it for 5 seconds. Why isn't it working? How come? See, I knew it. We couldn't do it. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with us. No. Our brains don't like change. That's it. It takes time and repetition. And so you have to ask yourself, how committed am I? How committed am I to change this pattern, to make sure that we are creating something good for ourselves, that we are getting closer to the future that we want for ourselves? How committed are you to being happy? How committed are you to modeling a healthy relationship for your kids? How committed are you? And then the last one is consistency. Rinse and repeat over and over and over and over again. This is not sexy work by any means, but it is important. This is how you shift away from building resentment. This is how you shift away from feeling angry all of the time, or stressed, or lonely. So how committed are you to feeling happy, more loved, more connected? How committed are you? Without that commitment, without running towards something rather than away from something, without that awareness, without the consistency, without the trial and error, you're gonna end up where you were. So instead of going back to, back to step 1, try this, see what happens. It's gonna take time, less time than it took for you to create it. I had my client today, she's like, why isn't it happening faster? And I had to point out to her, look at all of these things that have changed. Hello. You gotta realize the wins, or else it's gonna feel like we have so much more to do. Nothing has changed. But how true is that? How true is that? So if you're in that space, my advice to her was start practicing gratitude. Start actively thinking about what has shifted in my marriage since I've done the work, since I started doing the work. What has shifted? Because your brain does not like to make you a liar. And so if you have a belief that your husband doesn't care, guess what your brain's going to do? Find examples of him not caring. That's not always true. Sometimes there are moments where you're perceiving him not caring, but then there's also moments where he does show he cares, but you are dismissing them because, like I said, your brain doesn't want to make you into a liar. So if you're holding on to that belief, consciously or subconsciously, that he doesn't care about you, you're likely ignoring some things. You got tunnel vision. Sorry, that doesn't fit my belief. Don't want to see you. Sorry. Bye-bye. How many of you are doing that right now? If you are, build in intention. Actively ask yourself, when are some times that he showed he's cared about me, or whatever it is that you are believing right now? When are some times? Inject some facts into this irrational mess. And give evidence. No, he does. See, that one time and that one time. And then ask yourself, what else could that have meant? That example that you've chosen to cling on to prove that he doesn't care about you, or whatever it is. So anyway, recap, focus on what you're working towards instead of running away from. Awareness, assess and test, commitment, and consistency. Go try that, see how that works, let me know. And if you need help, I got you. Have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.